Hello everyone, this is Ryan Walker on the campus of Huntington University. You're listening to Rooted, an in-depth conversation with interesting people and topics that matter to the Forrester family. Make sure you subscribe to Rooted on iTunes, Google Play, or Spotify. You can also find us by searching Forrester Radio, Rooted. Hey everyone, and welcome to this episode of Rooted, where we have a special guest here today in Amanda Morris-Campbell, who you may have seen speaking in chapel or on a Word Up Wednesday, but she does a lot more than that behind the scenes. So first off, thank you for joining the show, and how are you doing today?
Thanks, Ryan. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm excited to chat.
That's good to hear. Can you talk a little bit about your background as a student here, and then transitioning into what your role is now here at HU?
Sure thing. So I came in as a freshman in 2012. I was a ministry major in the worship arts department. And then I was a CMC for 2 years. And that was a really life-changing thing for me. I made some of the best friends that I made in college through that program. Had really, really good mentors through Grace Kaufman and then Nori Friesen. Awesome humans. And so we might get into that a little bit in further questions, but it changed my life enough that I kind of redirected my career path towards full-time ministry in a very different way than I expected, and ended up staying ever after. And so I started the grad school program here in 2016 and stepped into a GA role in campus ministries at the time with Dr. Friesen. And so I've been working with the CMC and now Sojourner program. I think this is my 8th year. My 8th year since I came in. This is my 6th team. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've been here for a while. So my role now is I supervise the Sojourner program. Primarily, that's most of my job. I meet with students, and then I'm also here for other students who maybe need to talk about things, pastoral care and counseling, helping out with chapel, other events, working really closely with Mark and Arthur.
Yeah, sure. And thank you for giving that background. We talked about it a little bit about before. I don't think the school does justice on who you are. I just think you go up there and people are like, okay, she's one of the chapel people. No, yeah. She's a lot more than just that. So,
it's very kind of you, Ryan.
Yeah, of course. 2 years ago, you kind of took the lead role after Norris Friesen retired, one of my favorite people that was on campus.
Absolutely.
But what are some of the things that you learned from him into your role now?
Oh my gosh. I don't know that I can ever totally quantify how much Nori impacted my life. We still have a regular Jimmy John's lunch date. Mm-hmm. He's one of my favorite people in the world. But I think one of the things that Nori really helped me figure out is how to lead from who I am, and not trying to be somebody else in that leadership, in that guidance with other people, to really practice a ton of transparency in how I guide the students that I work with. I think also one of the things Nori really lived well and helped me figure out is the value of these seemingly off-topic conversations. You've had lots of those discussions with him, Ryan.
Sure have.
Where you're sitting in a one-on-one and you're like, why are we talking about this doesn't make any sense.
Sports.
Or Marvel movies in my case. And then by the end of it, it's turned into something really life-giving. And those were some really transformative discussions for me, and as a student, and then as a staff person with him. And I've really translated that a lot into my work with students, and anybody who is currently a Sojourner or has been in the recent past will probably giggle a little bit because we do a lot of those conversations in one-on-ones. But finding where God is in those really mundane things. And also just I'm checking my note because I knew there was something else important.
Yeah, that's okay.
The really, really big one was Nori transitioned in when I was still a student. We had a shift in leadership, and so when he came in, I was in my second year as a CMC, and he had this really humble attitude coming into that around wanting to learn from us as students about what the program was about, what we found valuable. And then when I transitioned into leading with him, alongside him, that attitude of we have just as much to learn from you guys, the students, the team that we're leading, as we have to teach you all. Wow. And that has been really, really formative to how the program became what it is now.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's really cool to hear. I love Nori. It stinks he's not around anymore, but still has an impact, obviously, on you and some other people on campus. And he was a great role model for who you are today and how you go about your business. So one of the biggest things that maybe the biggest thing that you've done since you've come here, you rebranded the CMCs, which were formerly known as campus ministry coordinators. The freshmen may have not known that, but most of the people that have been here know what a CMC is. You changed them to Sojourners, and you kind of have a different direction with what you want to do with that. So could we just get started with how that idea maybe popped in your head?
Mm-hmm.
What does Sojourner mean?
Mm-hmm.
And why does specifically the rebrand?
Yeah, so the practical answer to that is that last year at the start, probably in August, September, October time, we shifted as an office from the Office of Campus Ministries to the Center for Spiritual Formation. And so I remember Arthur and I had just like a regular conversation, and he at the end was like, so should we change the name? And I was like, that would probably make sense, wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
it? If we were no longer the Office of Campus Ministries, campus ministry coordinators didn't make as much sense.
Right.
So it just kind of opened the door to have a conversation that really did need to be had, because as you know, having lived that role, Ryan, that title didn't really mean a lot.
Yeah.
It had evolved so much, and the program had changed so much since its inception in the 90s that that title didn't really fit what we were actively doing anymore.
Right.
So that was kind of the practical side of that, and it opened a really cool conversation for Arthur and I to have around what were we going to call this thing, to really be more explicit about what we were doing. So the word sojourners in our context, we're kind of coming from this place in the Old Testament, and a sojourner is a person who is in a setting that is not their own, a traveler, a person on a journey, and the sense of that, the context of that is that you're going to be in this place, but you're not going to be there forever. You are on your way somewhere else. You're going to be in this place for a season, and then you're going to move on to the next thing. So for our purposes, that sojourner really encapsulates these three big things that we wanted to communicate. So first is that all of our students in the HU community are sojourning. You are here for a time, and then you're going to move on to the next thing. And we in the Center for Spiritual Formation really want to equip you to live your faith in ways that are authentic and practical in whatever that context is. And all of you are going to go out from this place in this particular specific context into something different. And that's going to look different for each student and each life and each Christian walk and each relationship with Jesus, right? It's going to be different for each of you. And so we want to equip you to think really practically and really thoroughly about your faith,
Sure.
And really personally in a lot of ways. And so we wanted to give that context to all of our student community, that this is a place where you are for a season, but you're not going to be here forever. We love that you're here, and this place will always be home if you want it to be, but you're going to go off to the next thing.
Right.
And so for the Sojourners program, we also wanted to communicate something that had shifted. As Nori and I had done this work together, we got this feedback around the thing that students, as they were doing their exit interviews out of CMCs, the thing that we heard a lot was, I was really changed by my one-on-ones, my conversations with you or with Nori. I was really changed by my team, the people I worked with, the relationships that I made with other CMCs, and by the relationships I built with students. So we heard much more about how students were changed, how they grew in the program, rather than, I did these programs and I really felt like I made a difference, or I really felt like I changed a conversation. And we heard some of that for sure, but that was not the prominent theme of what was going on as students were walking out of our program. So we wanted to pay more attention to what was actually going on. If this was the natural direction that God was taking us, we wanted to follow that. So Sojourners allowed us to shift the conversation towards discipleship. I hesitate to say before programming, but before programming, because programming is a means for that discipleship, but discipleship is what we're doing. Discipleship's the point, and we wanted to be more explicit about that. So Sojourner as a title gave that connotation that you were on a journey. The people who joined our program are signing up for a year of growing on purpose, of growing transparently, honestly, authentically, in whatever shape that takes. And that's going to look different for every student. And this allowed us to be more explicit about that. The other really important thing about it is I wanted to be able to change the conversation, change the expectation of what Sojourners were, towards that growth discipleship mindset. And leadership is really important, and that's certainly part of what Sojourners are doing. But I wanted to maybe remove a little bit of that sense that I felt as a CMC, as a student, that like, oh, CMCs like have their faith figured out.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate that the most. I did not have a church background, and I was a CMC for 2 years, and I think a lot of people were thinking, okay, this guy knows everything. Well, here's my Bible homework help, and I don't know. I'm just trying to help you grow. Like that's what I'm trying to do here. So I really appreciate that. So
absolutely. And I felt I was a ministry student. I had grown up in the church, and I even felt some of that discomfort as a student CMC of like, I was supposed to have answers for people. Excuse me, I'm 19.
Yeah.
I don't know. And being able to be honest about that was a lot of my just like natural philosophy as a student leader. And that very obviously spilled over into my life as a staff leader, my philosophy of that, and wanting to just change that conversation for people. So if that's one thing people hear from our conversation today, is that Sojourners are people who are growing with you.
Yeah.
They are not ahead of you on this path. They're walking next to you. And their job, the thing they sign up for that they want to do with you is just create an environment for you to grow. They want to model their own growth, again, transparently and honestly, where they're at, where Jesus is in their life, and invite you to do that with them. Not
That's
because
awesome.
they have an answer, not because they figured it out, not because they're perfect, but because they have met Jesus and they want to invite you to walk with Jesus with them.
I love that. That's really impactful. Seriously, I love that, and I hope everybody that hears that and didn't understand before, I hope they have a really good understanding now. I love it. So, and I just wanted to give you the platform to be able to, this is why we're doing this. You know, we're not doing it to just change the name and now it's something cool.
Yeah.
Sojourners doesn't roll off the tongue like
does
CMCs
not.
does. So
It does
that
not.
is not the reason why she did this, of course. Has the transition been easy?
Kind of to our joke just now, yes, but also no. I think I've actually been really encouraged and really thankful for the RDs helping me out with this.
Yeah.
They really made like the commitment to be really specific about calling it Sojourners. And I think for them both, all three of our RDs are actually people I was in college with. So we were all here at the same time.
That's neat.
It is really interesting. So they, well, and both Evan and Paige were CMCs. So they lived that. They did that.
That's cool. I like that.
Yes.
RDs for CMCs
Yes.
and Sojourners. That
they've
needs to
been
be the theme.
just incredibly supportive. I cannot say enough good things about all three of them. But they made a really strong commitment at the beginning of the year not to say CMCs, to say Sojourners every single time and to catch themselves if they slipped up, which sounds like a really silly thing, but it really helped us, I think, especially with freshmen, to say Sojourners and not say CMCs. So that part has been easier than I expected it to be. And I don't know if it's just because the people who are talking to me know that that's what they're supposed to call it, and they're really careful. But it seems like it's really disseminated well. Like we were joking about, it is not an easy word to say. Sojourners is a little bit of a mouthful. So I'm still fully expecting that that's going to get abbreviated somehow.
Well, Abdul had Sojos.
He did.
I was hoping Sojos would come out.
Was going to catch on.
Yeah, it hasn't.
Not
so
that I've
far,
caught.
we will start putting signs up.
Yeah.
Anyways, go ahead.
So that part has been easier than really I expected it to be. I think kind of like we were alluding to in the previous question, the thing that's been a little bit tougher is still just kind of, we're sort of re-steering the ship in a sense of like what people expect this role to be. And I certainly still get people who want to come and tell me like, my Sojourner like did this or said this and like, want to tattle on them a little bit for me, and I'm always like, yeah, it's okay, because they're a person, and they're learning.
True.
And they're maybe learning in a different area than you're learning right now. And if that's a thing that you and the Lord are working on, and you're feeling really passionate about that and adjusting that in your own life, wow, awesome, love that for you. God bless and Godspeed. Continue down that path. But that might not be the path that your Sojourner's on at this precise moment.
Right.
And so that's some of the awkwardness, and that was something we were encountering 2 years ago before we changed this name. And that's still, I think we're still redirecting the ship a little bit. And I was expecting that. I knew we were going to be doing that for a while, and that's okay. And honestly, Mark and I have had, since he's joined our staff, have had a lot of really good discussions about how to change the direction of the ship, so to speak, in helping people hear that and understand that, that these are people who are learning on purpose, who are being discipled. And that doesn't mean they're going to do it all perfectly. And it's not, I like to get feedback about how Sojourners are doing.
Right,
That's cool.
exactly.
Not mad about that. But it's just a different conversation that we're having than we were 5 years ago.
Right. And we're talking a little bit about how you want to direct that ship into, okay, they're not supposed to be the only people on campus that you can go to for answers. They're supposed to be walking with you. They're not ahead of you. They're not behind you. And it's okay if they are behind you in your own faith. You know, some people are over each other, I guess, in what they've learned in the past. What do you want to accomplish moving forward with the new brand in the long term?
Yeah, I think the thing that I've always wanted is this program when I was a student was really life-changing for me. It was the people who showed up for me in some of the really traumatic seasons of my life. These were the people who held me when I was broken and not okay. Yeah. And I've always wanted this to be a safe place for people, both within the team, that these are people who show up for each other, as well as being the person who can hold that with you if you're going through something really, really difficult. And so I want that to continue to be a place, a program where those kinds of real community, real life change happens. And more than anything, I want people to keep meeting Jesus here. I want people to keep encountering who Jesus is going to be in their lives. And maybe it is sort of a season of life thing for me as well, in my late 20s, just being maybe a step down the path further than you all are, and saying like, oh, wow, I'm so different. I'm such a different person than I was in 2012 when I walked into this place for the first time. And Jesus has been so much more than I thought he was going to be in my world. And I've met him in places I did not expect. And I want to provide that as much as I am able to for our students, in encouraging them to see Jesus in places they don't expect him to be. And that's some of where this is happening. I want students to feel welcomed, regardless of where they're coming from, regardless of what their history is, regardless of how well they feel they're going to fit in this community, that Jesus will meet them here and that Sojourners want to help them with that.
That's great.
So that's my biggest thing heading into the rebrand, and that this continues to be a safe place for students along every spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're doing a terrific job with that. I thank you for joining the show. That's all I have for you today. Thank you again for joining the show and sharing a little bit about the Sojourner program.
Thanks, Ryan.
Of course, and good luck with the rest of the year and the future.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Rooted. Make sure you subscribe to Rooted on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. And remember, you can listen to Forster Radio over the air in Huntington on 105.5 WQHU, or by visiting our website at forsterdigital.net.